as usual. We'll try to go through it as fast as we can, but make sure we cover everything thoroughly too. Uh, we'll, as usual, let the presenter present, and then the committee ask questions, and then the other board members, and then anybody else. So I don't know if Jared or Greg is going to cover the first thing, the tractor purchase for East Pike.
I will let Greg cover that, Mr. Kerr, as he's kind of has been working with East Pike on that and the custodian to kind of see what they need there with all the new sidewalk and everything we put in as part of the East Pike project. So, Greg, you want to talk about that?
Yes, thank you for the preamble of that. I have 4 quotes for tractors that we could possibly use up at East Pike Elementary. And like Jared said, we did add quite a bit of sidewalk up there to go to the west side of the building itself. We've looked at a John Deere tractor. It's an X738. All of the tractors we looked at are going to be very similar. 2 of them are gasoline engines, 2 of them are diesel engines. They are all 4-wheel drive. They will all have 60-inch hydraulic angling snow blades. So the first is a John Deere X738, and it was the price on that was $10,261.52.
Greg, I'm going to interrupt this one.
It's called
Greg.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have stuff that you can show us or send us, a matrix or something? Or?
Unfortunately, this was all sent independently. Most of them did not send me a bid sheet. Some of them were faxes. And unfortunately, I've been working with the ESCO a lot the last couple weeks, and it's been taking up, I took up 5 days from 8 a.m. to about 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So,
right.
Unfortunately, what I could do.
We can put a summary together for you. I guess what we're asking, Mr. Kerr, is for the board to consider at the next board meeting the purchase of this tractor, or a tractor for East Pike. Currently, they just have a snowblower. We've had a couple of times where we've needed it this year, and it's broken down. It's kind of getting to the end of its useful life, and we're just looking to replace that with a tractor because of all the new sidewalk area. And what we would like to do is purchase that out of capital reserve. It wasn't originally in the budget when we passed that back in June. So we just are asking the board to approve that at the next meeting so that we can purchase it and have it at East Pike as soon as possible. But we can send you a comparison of the different quotes we've gotten.
Okay, that would be good. Thank you.
Jared, what kind of money are we looking at here?
What were the quotes you got, Greg? Like 10,000? 10, 12,000?
Yeah, $10,261.52. That is the most, or that is the Massey Ferguson for $13,200. I'm looking. I think I may have sent that to you, Jared. I might have typed that up and sent that. So I'm going to look and see if I can find that. And if so, I will send that out immediately because I believe I did send that out.
Greg, where would this tractor be stored?
We have a shed up at East Pike Elementary. It would be out back.
Near the playground?
The front, right in the back area where the administration parks, or where some of them park, back in that area, like where the kitchen and dumpster is. Yes, we have a shed back there that we purchased, and that's where we would house it.
How many horsepower is this tractor?
Hold on a second. Horsepower.
And would it be used for mowing?
No, for up there, we wouldn't be. We weren't going to purchase the mower. We could always add that later if we wanted to. The Simplicity is a 33 horse. The Mahindra is a 20 horse. The Massey Ferguson is 23 horse. And I'm thinking the John Deere was a 28 horse, but I'm not seeing that in their quote.
Were the-
Unfortunately, I don't know why it's not listed.
Were the diesel units more expensive?
Yes, yeah, diesels are inherently more expensive, and part of the reason for that is they are they last longer. Which is typical of diesels. They carry a little more fuel economy with a diesel than you do with gasoline engine. So that's the one nice part of the diesel. You spend sometimes, well, you spend more on changing oil, but less in other maintenance. It's just a trade-off that you have between diesel and gasoline engines.
Where are the quotes from, Greg?
We have two of them from two different John Deere dealers, one in Edmondsburg, one in Somerset. We have one from Hilda Brands, and we have one from McAdoo Sports, which is towards Shalakta.
Two of the quotes are diesel and two of the quotes are gas. Cameron.
Thank you. I missed that.
Yeah.
Greg, the Kubota dealer didn't give us a quote? The one in
It
Schluck-
was, yes, I checked him, and it was even more than the other ones, considerably more. So I held off on that one. And we've had a Kubota, and our parts were a little bit pricey on repairs, so that's sort of the reason I didn't include it in the spreadsheet. Of course, if you would like, I can also include that.
Terry,
Okay,
I think,
I found whoops. Yeah.
Terry, if we may, I think that Greg could make a recommendation to the board. Provide all the quotes and recommend a machine that we should look at. And we can move on from this, I think.
I guess one other question I have is, are there fuel storage tanks that you keep in any of the schools, or do you carry all your fuel, whether it's diesel or gas?
All the gasoline we purchase at either Satterley's or Indiana Fuel and Oil. We do have a diesel tank at our maintenance building that we keep off-road diesel in for our mowers and some of our other tractors that we have.
So is that I guess if it's gasoline, then you have to keep 5-gallon cans in your storage shed, or how do you store the gasoline?
Yes, we store them in our storage sheds and put them in the yellow fuel container. I don't want to call them vaults, but they are fuel containers, storage units.
They're fireproof containers, the cabinets?
That's what they are. Yes, I just sent everybody. I just sent everybody the quotes.
Okay, and I mean, I as far as tractors, I like diesel tractors also, but why wouldn't you want a mower deck for this tractor? Like, you don't need it, and you have other tractors that are in good condition to do the mowing.
Yes, we have other tractors that would probably be much quicker. The junior high, they have 2 people at their building, so they do have a mower on theirs at a very small lot. So that's why we have a mower deck for that particular mower that we house at the junior high. With the workload, especially in the summer and taking care of the school buildings, we don't have all of them. Now, we do have Eisenhower as a mower deck, but then again, it's a smaller lot. East Pike has a tremendous amount of property there. So we use 0 turns, which are much quicker than what a standard tractor would be to mow the property. That's why we weren't really looking at a mower deck at this time. We thought if we would ever have have the need, at least a tractor is, it's a small garden, or just a large garden tractor, smaller utility. These are not tractors that you would put an attachment on, like a backhoe or a front loader. These are just like more of a commercial garden tractor.
Okay, I'm not sure who all raised their hand. I know I saw Cindy.
Am I up?
Go ahead, because I'm not sure who
Okay.
else did.
Okay. So let me just get this straight. This tractor would only be used for removing snow from the sidewalks. Is that correct?
Currently, yes.
Then why go with a tractor instead of going with a large snow blower? I mean, you can get a snow blower, a good quality snow blower for a lot less. And if all you're doing is sidewalks and not dealing with gravel and uneven, areas, dirt areas, then the snow blower should last a very long time.
That's true, and we do have a snowblower up there, and it's extremely wide. It's still, with the amount of territory that he has to cover, because you're looking at where the buses enter. You have the sidewalk. The sidewalk from one end of East Pike to the other end of East Pike. Plus, you have where the flagpole. You have the cross connection between the parking lots. By the time one person is doing that, especially if it's snowing during the day, the custodian would have to be outside well over an hour, especially during maybe lunch period or getting closer to dismissal. It's just a much quicker way to remove snow from that much of an area.
Okay.
We've been using snow blowers for years, and then we added a lot more sidewalk to that. Was the reason that the request was for a tractor opposed to a snow blower.
I know that I don't have the biggest one, but I have a fairly good sized self-propelled Honda snowblower that I love it when I get to do nice straight sidewalk, even areas, and it can go as fast as I can walk. It can blow that snow. So I just thought maybe that would be a little bit less expensive, and the snow blowers last a long time also. So just a thought.
Yeah, we were just asking for whether or not the board approves it. That, of course, definitely with conversation with the whole board.
That's a good question and comments. And I just questioned buying a tractor for over $10,000 just to do snow removal. But anybody else have any other comments? If not, we'll look at that matrix and then, we'll move it on to the board, but then we can, deliberate and talk about it more. Tamara?
No, I guess, yeah. I feel like Cinda does. If this is a huge purchase for just snow, and I guess if we have more details on how long that would take, how much of a time crunch that is, how much exactly space was added that needs to be plowed, that wasn't there last year before the expansion.
Yeah, I don't have an estimate on the lineal feet. For some reason, I was thinking of 520 feet we added, but I'm not positive. But it's from the front door of the existing, main front door where the students all go in, all the way down to the end of A wing was the area. And it's 5 foot wide.
Okay. Go ahead, Tamara. Yep.
So the snow blower that we have now, is it possible that we just need to upgrade our snow blower to have a a better one that can handle that if it's taking too long?
Yes and no. When you have the real wet, heavy snows, a snow blower is not as effective as the tractor is to be able to push it off the side. So that was one reason for the request also, was because of not all snows are easy to blow with the snow blower.
Very true. Thank you.
And I think another concern that Greg and I have also more with snow blowers than we do with tractors is snow blowers are a little, I don't want to say harder to use, but a little bit labor intensive and tend to be more at risk for a workers' comp claim. So if we're going to invest in something, we feel it's better to invest in a tractor, especially as we all, we in the past, and we still do have an aging custodial staff who is seems to be more prone to accidents. This could help us for any potential workers' comp, as well as it's easier to use and easier on the employee to use as well.
Okay. We'll look at that summary that you'll send out, and then we can, like somebody suggested, put a recommended one on there. I would, there's benefits to the diesel. I would support that. So, but I'd also like to, I guess, see the ages of the mowers that are at East Pike, because it may give some of us more comfort level knowing that this tractor will turn into a mower also in the near future.
Mr. Kerr, currently, and I apologize if Greg and I didn't explain it well, but currently there are no mowers that are set directly for East Pike. The mowers that come up and mow East Pike are housed at the maintenance garage and are used across the district. There are some buildings, like he said, Eisenhower, that has its own mower, and that's because the custodian there has the time to mow during the mowing season and has just a little bit to mow, where East Pike has the huge field in the back, all the grass up front. So those mowers are brought up from other buildings or from the maintenance garage, which then are used across the district to do the mowing. So there isn't one that's just set for East Pike.
Okay, thank you. And I guess then that sparked another question. None of the other tractors are available to put a blade on, use it or one of those at East Pike?
The other tractors, we currently have snow brushes on. We have one at the senior high and one at the junior high school.
So the plan would be that you could use this at any of the schools, not just East Pike, also if needed.
We'd have to transport it. For that, we house the two snow brushes at each of the larger buildings, the junior high and senior high. And the senior high also has a tractor, the John Deere tractor, much larger than what we're talking about here, because they have to do the 6th Street sidewalk that goes from up behind the high school all the way down to White Farm Road. And of course, he has all the way around the building, around the new gym, and down the driveway, and also to along 5th Street. And of course, the junior high, with their snow brush, they have to go around the entire building, plus the south side of Dry Rock, and also in behind the building itself, where the playing field is.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Any other comments? If anybody, will move on. If not, first thing on the non-agenda items is the Constellation ESCO audit update. And I'm guessing, Mr. Tom, you're going to present that.
Yes, good evening, and thanks for having me back. Very much appreciate it. And to the point that Greg made earlier, thank you, Greg, for all the time you have been spending with my engineering team out there. It is appreciated and has helped us accomplish quite a bit. I want to kind of give you just a quick snapshot, couple bullet point overview of where we're at to date. with our target of end of February for final investment grade audit for consideration by the board. Greg's been wonderful, as has the admin staff, in getting us what we need from paperwork costs as well as access to the buildings. We've accomplished and are beginning to receive in, I do see item 2 on your agenda, pricing for upgrading district-wide to LED lights, which would be I'll call it, I guess, the latest and greatest in energy efficient lighting, because we're looking to drive and utilize those savings to help offset the cost of some of the capital items that you're having us look at to include in the ESCO. So I actually saw on Friday, first costing come in, and I think we had 4 or 5 companies that are providing costing on that to our design. And we're also incorporating some additional lighting and some enhancements for the high school parking lot. And we spoke at length, I know, with Greg about that. So that should be in. Beyond the energy savings, there'll be some rebates associated with that, just like phase 1. So we're hoping there'll be a check coming back to the district directly on that. As part of that LED lighting, we're combining that with some electrical redistribution in some of the buildings to assist with spot cooling needs that you have on a various basis within the elementary schools that are not air conditioned, where you may have requirements for air conditioning for specific medical needs, things of that nature. So we're going to be doing some redistribution of loads within the buildings to accomplish that. That's still in progress. On Thursday of last week, also see on your agenda here, item 3, East Pike, as well as Horseman. We've gone out and reviewed and had, I think it was 4 contractors with Greg on Thursday over at East Pike. And we obviously did include the 2 contractors that you took a look at earlier in this year and before for consideration for quotations on that. I'm expecting a little more feedback on that tomorrow. Today's a holiday for us, but I'm scheduled with Michael to talk about that. There was some concern about the height of the ductwork as well as the curves on the existing units, even at an R42, but we're going to run that down. And as part of what you asked us to do, we're also looking at the rooftop units over there based on age and helping to solve some comfort issues there within the administration wing of the building. I don't want to forget electrical service upgrades and enhancements and replacement of Horace Mann. We're taking that into consideration as well to make sure that that's all squared away from a reliability and safety standpoint moving forward. And let me see here. Additionally, beyond that, I believe that I saw some specifications go out for request for new direct digital controls or temperature controls / energy management system for over at East Pike, where you have an old non-supported DDC system currently, but does not integrate to the district's district-wide building automation energy management system. So that is in progress as well. But we're well underway. I think the technical team, as long as we get cooperation from the subcontractors on getting pricing back in, we'll be able to start working with administration to try and piece together how this looks financially, as well as from a savings standpoint, because we are going to be able to, under the ESCO, leverage that extra savings that we're overachieving on in phase 1 with the additional savings I'll say the LED lighting is going to be the big winner here. We'll pick up some nickels, dimes, and quarters along the way on the other things as well. But that, I think, is going to help to offset some of the capital costs you're looking at for all the things that you've requested to this point in time. So that's where we're at on the ESCO side, and we're making good progress and very much reliant on Mr. Trout and Mr. Cornauer on that. So I want to thank them tonight in front of you folks.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And you mentioned you'll be ready for our February meeting then with your report, and hopefully you can have it to us ahead of time, at least several days, prior to the weekend, hopefully, so the board and members can look through it and digest it and then have some good questions.
Yeah, when I say February, by the end of February, it will be my commitment to have it done. I think we'll have a good handle on where we're coming in general prior to that, but I'm expecting by the end of February before I can get all my pricing back in and internal approvals. But that's where I expect, but I think we'll be very much in that timeline and should have an update for you prior to that meeting.
Okay, thanks. And before I call on you, Walter, I was going to call on Barb and Tom. Barb, do you have anything?
No, I think I'm okay at this time.
Okay, Tom?
I do want to make sure that we get, if we are going to do roof work, that we get at least an R30 minimum in those roofs. 42 would be better and 50 would be better than that, but at least the R30. Let's not just replace the roof membrane and not put the insulation in.
Walker.
And then I know that there were a couple of contractors on Thursday, I think, and Greg, I believe you were there with Michael, thought there might be some issues at an R42, but that's something we're digging into to verify, Tom.
Yeah, and Brian, make sure it's a R30 minimum, not an R30 average. They seem to have a problem with that. But insulation has to be around the hole. It doesn't do any good to have a hole in your coat. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Is the issues with the R42 the height of the curb boxes or the perimeter, or what's the issues there, Tom?
What was reported to me was the ductwork as well as the curbs. Greg, I don't know if you were there when Michael was having that conversation with some of the prospective responders to our specifications on that. Were you there when he had that conversation with some of them?
Yes, I was. Yeah, it was the, and his comment to them was to expect to be raising the ductwork. Well, not to raise it, it would have to be replaced. And more than likely, the suggestion was if you go to lift those units, given the age, lifting them and raising the ductwork, you'd have to actually replace all the ductwork because of the age and more than likely the units too. So that was part of what he was explaining to the contractors that were up there, because you, with any additional snow, after you raise the insulation that much, your curbs, not only for your rooftops, which would be in danger of snow melting or blowing or coming in through the units after, if they weren't raised, if they were maintained at the same level. That was the reason that they needed to be raised.
And if I recall, those two rooftop units are past ASHRAE service life, close to 20 years old. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, they are. They were in place in 1999.
Okay, thank you.
Greg and Brian, we're talking about the ductwork that's above the administration building, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, you actually have it in two places. You have rooftop 1 and 2, which is above the administration, and then you have rooftop 3, which is over top of the current East Pike office and nurses suite.
Okay, my concern there is that we're the ductwork should be inside. The ductwork should be inside the insulating envelope, and that was a mistake to put them on the roof in 1990 and 1950. It's a mistake to put them on the roof in 2021. We need to find a way to put those duct. You can't run an insulated duct, which is an R5, which is basically a double pane window, on top of these buildings and expect to have any energy efficiencies. So if we're going to put a new machine on, which we probably have to do anyway because of the Freon problem and the life of the machines, we should look at moving the ductwork into the main space and underneath the roof, underneath the insulation, and get it off the dang roof. So that's my opinion.
And I was going to ask the same thing, Tom, and I know this maybe throws more work into your audit, Brian, is maybe have an estimate of what Tom is suggesting so that we can make a good decision of whether we want to bite the bullet and try to do R42 or R50 or whatever and versus the R30. I mean, we have to have a cost estimate to be able to make a good decision.
But Terry, more importantly than the insulation is getting those ducts inside the insulated, inside the conditioned space. Right now, those ducts are running all over. They're running wild over that roof.
Right. So what I ask gets that done. Walter?
Yeah, Terry, thank you. And no problem with the committee going first. But my question to Brian is during the last ESCO, we upgraded the lighting system, and now we're going to upgrade it again, which I understand. But my question to you, sir, is have we reached the payback on the last upgrading of the lighting system? I know that, in other words, we spent X amount of money to upgrade those lights. Have we paid ourselves back yet, or do we still owe some out there? And how would that figure into your cost calculations in your audit?
What I tell clients is technology advances. We're at a point now where the old fat fluorescent tubes, the F40s, then there were 34s, and then technology took everybody down to T8s and T5s primarily. It really becomes, I guess, a math question and a financial question more than anything else. But we're going to run the numbers on upgrading what you have to LEDs. We'll see what the return on that is, so you can leverage those savings against the additional work that you want to try and accomplish. Some of the benefits, I'll say, is you're in year 7 or 8 in the first ESCO, and at about 2,000 or 3,000 hours burn hours, you're at that point where you're starting to replace those lamps now. And as you're replacing those lamps now, by moving towards the LEDs, you're going to take that off of what I'll call your operating costs moving forward. And LED lamps, depending upon I'll say the manufacturer that's selected, in a good, better, best scenario, just for your lamps within the buildings themselves, they'll probably have a minimum useful life of 50,000 hours, and even as high as potentially maybe 100,000 hours for exterior lights. So they'll last you well beyond what I'll call that 20 some odd thousand hours that you get with your fluorescent lamps. But it becomes a math problem. Does that 7, 8, 9 year return provide benefit to helping offset, I'll say, rooftop units over at Eisenhower and redesigning air conditioning? And that's how I would approach it, much as I'm sure the first ESCO was. That lighting was used to help pay for roofs and other things and windows that maybe didn't have such a great payback in the first phase.
No, Brian, I understand that part of it because I was part of that first ESCO. But my question is to whether or not when we went from the old-fashioned fluorescent down to the T8s and T5s, whether or not we've actually paid ourselves back and recovered the cost of that upgrade in the last 8 to 9 years. That's the question I'm asking.
I would say yes, that lighting has paid for itself in general, in totality for you.
Brian, let me jump in here. Walter, we're going to be replacing one by one the fluorescent bulbs throughout the whole district. I'd have a different opinion if we were 3 years into this project, but we're almost a decade in. Greg's going to be going out and replacing bulbs by the dozens. The price of the LED bulbs and the fluorescent bulbs are almost the same now. The power consumption of the LED is what, Brian, a tenth of what it is for the fluorescents. It's a significant savings that, and then you push the maintenance 20 years down the line before Greg has to go back out, because he's not retiring, by the way. He's going to stay around and replace these light bulbs. But it makes sense at this point. 5 years in, probably not. But at this point, we're going to put a ladder up there and fix those bulbs anyway. So I'm anxious to see what.
Tom, I understand that, and I certainly agree with you on that. But I guess that's the kind of analysis that I'm essentially asking Brian to include in this audit, is to kind of lay that out so that it's kind of in that black and white numbers when we are looking to have to replace the bulbs, whether or not we actually have paid ourselves back. And I'm all for this, but I just want to make sure that the numbers work. That's all.
Okay. Brian, is there also some grants for the LED reducing power consumption? Is there grants or scholarships for this at this point?
Rebates and incentives will be calculated and applied. So just as with phase one, we're expecting rebates and incentives back on the LEDs.
Okay, and they would and for Greg to replace fluorescents with fluorescents, there wouldn't be any grants or rebates.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's going to make Walter's calculation a lot sweeter.
Yeah, and I'll pull out, dig into phase one on the ROI of that and see where that mean came in for the payback on that. So we'll have that for you, Walter. Not a problem.
Okay. Again, I'm just trying to look at this strictly from a numbers. You know, I have to assume it's going to be more than $1.298, and you know, right now with the way our local economy is, you know, every penny we spend has to be scrutinized and or justified, and so we need to have actual numbers and analysis, and not just happy talk and good guesses.
Absolutely, and we're going to have a guarantee on top of that as well. And again, depending upon, and if Jared wants to chime in, I think that the district's looking at utilizing primarily capital funds that have been borrowed specifically capital and infrastructure for the district. So in utilizing those funds that are earmarked for specifically those items, savings and rebates and incentives that may be generated from the ESCO project then become, for lack of a better term, I'll say, a source of revenue that can be applied in any way that you see fit. So if there happen to be pressing areas, maybe as it relates to educational programs, staffing, things of that nature, I believe it should afford the Indiana School District a little more flexibility in some recurring revenues as well as incentives that come in. So I hope that'll be a benefit to you as well.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And Walter, you brought up a good point. I mean, we have to justify to the taxpayers that the phase one ESCO was successful and that it has paid its dividends, and before we tear something out that we installed in that phase. So good question. I just want to throw a reminder, Brian, that, you know, we want to get this East Pike roof replacement project bid, you know, early in the spring here, and we want to hit the summer for replacement. So.
And as to that point, that's excellent. That's why we had the roofers out there. I committed, I believe, to letting you know, hopefully by the end of January, if we thought we were going to be able to carry it and cover it in the project. With the roofers being out there last Thursday, I think I know I'll have that answer for you very shortly as to whether it's something we feel that we can include and provide some value under the ESCO for you. So thanks for bringing that back up, Terry. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I may have thrown a little wrinkle into things, or Tom also, with looking at the HVAC roof units scenario. So appreciate it. Any other? Go ahead, Brian. Yes.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments before we move on? Nothing heard. We can go, looks like, to number 4, the high school life skills room and the chairlift project update. And Greg, you'll probably be covering the East Pike entranceway, number 5 also. Thanks.
Okay, the life skills is completely done. Well, let me back up a second. We're waiting for some closeout documentation. Everything else is completely done in that space. The chairlift itself is actually operational and everything else, as well as the entire room. As far as East Pike, currently they have I believe all the flooring is even installed in the new office area, going from the area that's connected to administration all the way out to the receptionist area. They still have a little bit of work that they're doing in the main walkway entry area. Everything is painted, ceiling tiles in. Did not make it up today, but they are ready to start installing the plumbing fixtures in the 2 restrooms and also the nurses' suite as far as the toilet. and sinks. The rooftop is scheduled for a startup. They had a part that was broken when it came in on a just on a control circuit, so they were waiting for that to come in. Everything else has been installed as far as all the air diffusers, thermostats are all in, the fire alarm data, everything is pulled and all the connections are made. They have the siding on the exterior. They are starting to work on the soffit and fascia. As soon as they get the soffit and fascia, the roofing company will finish their terminations on the roof edges. The canopy lights had to be reordered. We had a height issue when it came to installing the lights. The lights that was ordered was about it was 1 inch too high. They could have lowered, but they went back to the specs and pulled back the original fixture that was submitted. They had accepted the architect had accepted a suitable one that was submitted by the electrical contractor. That's why the original was ordered, but that was missed as far as the height. They did not realize that the height was that close when it came right down to putting in the soffit underneath. I did send some pictures I know to you. I don't know if you forwarded them to anybody.
Yeah, I did not.
Okay.
That was just for my update that I gave at the board meeting last week.
Oh, all right.
I can forward them. Yeah,
Okay.
like I said, I drove out through there last weekend, and it looks good. And I'd run in.
They make a lot of progress.
Pardon
me. I was just going to comment about the windows, the selection of the windows, and the outside looks very, very nice. Be complimented to them as far as the aesthetic on the outside. It's beautiful inside too. When you get a chance, I'll try to do a video and send a video to you, and we can send out the rest of the board.
Okay, that would be good. Thanks, Greg. And we had talked, I know, through emails with Jared and whoever else was on to once the East Pike office gets open, they can utilize it for a while, and we'll do an after action review on the use and the size of the rooms and that sort of thing, how it functions. So it may help if we move forward with a new office space at Eisenhower. So. And then anybody have any comments, questions on number 3 and 4?
Yes, Terry.
Go ahead.
I would like to know what the insulation, the R value is on the roof above the new part of East Pike. Do we have R values as high as Tom was talking about putting on the rest of the building? What's the value?
Does anybody remember?
I'm thinking it was R42. Cheney, would you have to remember?
I believe you are correct on that. I believe it was R42.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed.
Yeah, I think that's what we fought for.
And Greg, if you wouldn't mind verifying that, because I heard high thanks from everybody. So that way I want to be accurate with. Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I think that R30 that Tom was talking about earlier, if I recall right, when we did that first ESCO project, that was the minimal standard that we had asked for. Again, as Tom's pointed out, a minimum of R30 and would be consistent with the rest of the roofs that replaced the last go around.
Any other comments on number 3 and 4? Or 4 and 5? If not, I'll go on to number 6, and I'd ask Jared to put this on there just to let everybody know that the survey that we had asked to be done at Eisenhower was completed. It was sent out to all the board members, and it was also provided to our Buchard Horn architects who are working on some schematics for the Eisenhower property and building. Any questions on that? If not, number 7, not sure who's covering this. But go ahead.
Greg, I know you've been having some conversations with White Township and everybody as to the sewage problem we've been having on East Pike, not necessarily with our building, just in the general area. Do you have any updates on that?
Yes, and Cheney was with the White Township a lot more than I was, so he'll be able to also help a little bit with that this conversation as well. I'm not sure the date. We had a smell of sewage in our building, which we could not locate for a long time. Finally, we determined it was in a garage bay area of our building. It's a pit that we're assuming that we don't have any blueprints of the building or locations of any drains or anything associated with the building, since it was priorly built for Coca-Cola. But it was determined, well, I guess I'll go, there were 3 locations for sewer taps that we have in our building. On the most east part side, which would be closest to East Pike School, we have 2 bathrooms located, which also have sinks and a custodial closet. That goes straight out and ties into the 8-inch main that runs down along East Pike, parallel to East Pike, and that's the White Township line. We have a center area that has floor drains connected, and we have a connection in a pit outside. It's a 2-foot wide pit, 4 foot long, 3 foot deep. There are 2 connections in it, which we were kind of surprised. We just found that out with White Township. The drain line that's doing the floor drains had a broken clay tile on top. In the bottom of that pit, there is a drain that connects to an old plot for the White Township. It extends all the way up into the White Township property behind the motel, all the way through the front of our property down to the creek down below. And then we have a connection at the west end of our building, closest to where the buses are parked, and that has a large pit that looked like it was used for separating solids or something. Nobody really knows what it's for, but it's probably a 8 foot wide by, would that be about 16 foot, Cheney? Long and probably 5 foot deep.
That's pretty close.
Okay. In that pit is where we had detected the sewage. We had COG come in. They were removing the sewage from the pit, and that's when they discovered that we had sewage coming in as fast as they were taking it out. And that's when they knew there was a block in the main line out front of our property. And then they went and they contacted White Township, and that's when they discovered that the 8-inch main was plugged. Of course, nobody knows for how long. So the sewage had backed up all the way through that line to the center of our building, which is where our floor drains are connected. And we had a broken tile, and it went back into a old abandoned, I shouldn't say abandoned, an old storm line that goes up towards the, I believe the house in the pond, East Pikeway goes up that way. So that was a cross connection. That's what was determined out of all of the review of all the lines.
What is there a next step, or are we just in a holding pattern as far as the district?
Yes, I have, I'm waiting for Wednesday would be my last local bid to repair that, the line out in front of our building. It's just outside, barely outside the building in the 2 foot by 4 foot pit. We're going to put with White Township's approval. They said all they really want us to do is go ahead and put a new Fernco connection in there with a clean out, and we could let it go with that. We want to remove the old, or not remove, but cap the line that's in that box. We want to cap that and make it so it's permanently separate, and we're going to fill that area in with gravel, and with the clean out, so that we'll have a clean out in the event that we ever need to get into that, and we will not have anything connecting into that old storm line that goes through the front of the property. There are actually 2 storm lines, current storm line and the old one that was there, that they finally discovered some prints for.
Okay, thank you. Barb, Tom?
I don't
Anybody
have
else?
any-
Anybody else have anything? I don't see any hands raised, so we'll move on to number 8. Which is,
Terry,
yeah,
back to the Eisenhower survey. Was that sent to the board? I don't believe I saw any documents on that.
I thought that plot plan was sent to everybody, but we can definitely, Jared, you could send that to the board.
Yes.
It hasn't been.
The only people that I shared it with, Mr. Kerr, was the architect, but I can send it as soon as I got it. I sent it to the architect, but I can send it to the entire board as well.
Sounds good.
Okay. Moving on to number 8. This is probably what a lot of people are interested in. Greg, I'm guessing you're covering this one, or Jared?
Yes, I sent some information out to the board with some prices. We did look into the needlepoint bipolar ionization. The request last time was to have the price breakdown not only per building, but per room, and also to include some rooms that we did not initially have on it, which would be life skills, and a room that students may not have a mask on, which there are a couple other ones. So with the sheets that I sent, it is showing that, senior high, the junior high, all the elementaries. Okay.
Is it possible, Randy or Jared, you could bring that up on the screen, and then that way you can talk through it, and it's a lot easier for us to comprehend what you're telling us.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it in my email, and I can send it to Randy quick.
I have it. I can send it. I didn't know if he had it.
I don't have it pulled up right now, no, sir. But if you could send it to Randy, he can probably pull it up.
Okay, I'm sending it.
And Terry,
Yes.
could you then send it to everybody in their email? I looked back through mine. The only thing I saw was November 19th. We got some pricing on the bipolar ionization units, and that's all I've seen. So if there's something newer, I'd like to see it so I can print it out instead of looking at it on the screen. Tonight, the screen's okay, but I'd like to have a copy of the email if you could.
Okay.
Thank you.
My apologies. I should have sent that to everybody on the
Hold
list.
on, guys. Cinda, I thought I sent that out to the board this morning. The one from Trudy on January 12th. I think I forwarded it to the board. Did you not get it?
I don't think so. I'll look again, but I didn't see anything from you.
It went to Greg. Um,
Regardless, if Terry has it, if somebody can forward it, that would be good.
Okay, well, yeah, I thought I already did it, but there it is.
Tom, you did send it out to the entire board or forwarded it to the entire board at 3:15 today.
Okay, great.
3:15 was way after I looked at my email. Okay,
I
thank you.
just sent it again.
All right, thanks.
Sorry, Greg, but it makes it a lot easier for us to understand what you're telling us.
Yes. As they broke down each building for the locations that we were asking for, they can do any room that we ask. I've given them a lot of their air handling sizes to them. There are only a couple of things that they need from me to size and price one.
Greg,
they need model number. Yes.
Let me interrupt for a moment. Can you explain what the bipolarization does as opposed to the filtration?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think we need a little background here.
Okay.
Go
There's actually a full PowerPoint that I had an engineer send to me just recently. So what I'll do is I will send that out to everybody as well. I haven't gone through the whole PowerPoint myself yet. I'm still in the process. That's why I didn't send it previously. I'd like to have reviewed everything prior to sending it. But anyway, the bipolar ionization, needlepoint bipolar ionization, it is electrostatically, or it's charging the ions in the air, which are attacking the, it's similar, I say, because it's not producing ozone. Ozone also is charged and helps rid the air of pollutants, formaldehydes, gas fumes, bacteria, things like that. It's great for helping with mold. It's part of the process in the ionization or the electrostatic charging of it. It attacks and changes molecules to, I'll say, render them, I guess, inactive, or and it also makes them larger. So as everything can also be filtered back in, because as everyone has heard, a lot of the spread of bacteria is because how small they are, as well as also the characteristic, their makeup. So if you can also make it large enough where it is able to be filtered back in and then use your media to kill, catch the, I call it the dead stuff, because you still have, it'll attach to dust, everything, as it's going back through. But it's effectively killing, or neutralizing, I should say, the bacteria. Bipolar ionization has been around for a long time. And at one point, the bipolar ionization, or the ionization, it did one of the off, or negatives, I should say, of the ionization was it was producing ozone, which has turned out to be a lung and a respiratory issue if you produce too much ozone, more than what would be in nature. So, but the needlepoint bipolar has eliminated that part of it to where it's not producing the harmful ozone itself. Does that clear anything up?
Yeah, I think Tom just wanted a brief overview of what this is.
Well, and the filtration systems just filter solid particles, and they don't have any effect on the viruses or the molds.
Correct. If you were looking at just introducing it or putting HEPA filters in, a HEPA filter is going to stop the spread of the small particles, but it does not kill or make it inactive. So that's the major difference in component. Now, air systems are made quite differently. For schools, we have a lower volume, and they can't support actually a HEPA filter. HEPA filter is a much thicker filter, and the resistance that our motor has would never overcome the extra added filter. What would happen would be it would slow the airflow down enough that it's slowing down. Well, it would try to slow it down. It would give you increased drag on the motor, which would give you higher amperage, which would start to degrade your motor and you start to have failures. Now, when they design equipment, hospitals, they design theirs for HEPA filters. School districts were never looking at something like that because they weren't looking at the same type of environment that a hospital was looking at. So that's part of the reason, the difference of somebody say, well, a hospital has HEPA filters, but they designed their equipment just specifically to be able to use that. It's schools, that was never a consideration, of course.
Tamara, you raised your hand. Do you want to wait or do you want to ask the question now until Greg?
Well, it's about this topic. So, Greg, you said that the ionization makes the bacteria inactive. I don't know if you're using that term bacteria to mean bacteria and viruses, but it does it do the same to viruses?
Yes.
We know that this would help control corona, or a flu virus or whatever. It would definitely do what we think it's going to do for that virus.
Yes, one of the bullet points will say, it says the needlepoint bipolar ionization has shown to inactivate viruses.
Thank you.
Tamara,
So
it's the tests have been on standard viruses, not on COVID. The supposition is that it will also affect COVID in a negative way.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, I've contacted 2 engineering firms, talked to 3 engineers. The latest one I talked to, I actually was given the wrong engineer, which turned out to be beneficial for me as far as I'm concerned, because he handles the hospital side of the engineering for the HVACs. So for me, that was pretty exciting because now I was able to ask him some different things. And when they design systems now, they would like to add humidification, because that also helps. UV light, they say, would also help, and the bipolar. If budget was not an issue for you, those would be the 3 items that they would incorporate into a single system, and they do for clean rooms at hospitals and in different event centers, things like that. And which was exciting when I was talking to this particular engineer, because I was not sure if he would be able to answer what hospitals do, medical centers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the one nice part when I was talking to him and his counterpart that does schools, I asked them separately. I said, if you were given a limited cash flow and you have those 3 options, that would be the bipolar, the UV, and the humidification, what would you do? And both of them said, from the same firm, and also the other firm, all said that they would go with the bipolar ionization because of what it's proven, and that's what they're speccing in for new buildings that's interested in having something that would inactivate viruses.
Okay, Barb raised her hand. We get her question in.
My question dealt with the unit ventilators in, I guess, in the cafeterias. What's the approximate refresh rate on those ventilators, if you know them? You might not know them off the top of your head.
You're probably referencing how many air changes per hour.
Correct.
I don't
Yes.
have that. I'm going to guess. Okay, I'm going to take a guess because I've seen it I've looked in different areas of our buildings. I've had certain different requests, like for music, and most of them seem to be between 4 and 5. Now, we're required by the ASHRAE standards to bring 10% fresh outside air into those rooms anytime that they're occupied. We are increased our occupancy, and also prior to people showing up and after, we've increased runtime. Now, we were running 30%. We increased them up to 30%. So that's 3 times the ASHRAE standard. They wanted 10%. We were putting at 30%. Since the weather has got cold, we were starting to have issues with comfort control, where the size in the unit could not handle the temperature of the outside air coming in, mixing, and also keeping the room warm. So we backed that down to 20%. And that's something that we will play with constantly, so that we can bring more fresh air in. And that's essential too. And that's one of the things that he said, as far as what any building can do, if they can bring more outside air in and still maintain comfort, that is highly critical as far as changing the airflow, and because you're bringing clean, fresh air into your building all the time. Now, at Eisenhower Senior High and Ben Franklin, we have carbon dioxide detectors in classrooms. And what those do, if we, and there's something we can change as far as our setting. If classroom A4 and A5 decide they want to get together in one room, this is of course prior to the pandemic, the amount of CO2 in the room would raise because of so many students. So what that would do, it may open that outside vent 100% and close the inside. So it's bringing 100% air in for a short duration. Now, it would close if the temperature dropped too low, so that it could help bring back the temperature a little bit. So it would fluctuate a little bit back and forth. We have that technology currently in those buildings. Anything we add or go forward new, that's something that we definitely would like to maintain and keep going, because it does give us the ability to, without having to go in and physically manipulate and change things, we can bring more fresh air into a space that has additional people in it.
Okay, Walter, you raised your hand.
Yeah, and I guess this is a question for Mike and Jared, and I guess it's a question that they may not be able to answer this evening off the top of their heads. But it seems, first of all, I acknowledge that this whole discussion is really being driven by the COVID situation. But if it's killing the viruses for colds and common flus, there could be some additional justification to do this. One, to esoterically raise the health of our students and our faculty. But the question I have for Jared and Mike is, do we know how much it costs us under normal cold and flu for every teacher that's off because they get the cold or the flu, or the students that are off, and how does that impact our system? Because there may be some additional costs here that we could forego if we did put some of these bipolar ionization fixtures in our district in general.
Yeah, sir. I mean, to have a teacher out right now, and then if we are able to get a sub, costs us about $120 a day in total, I would say. So, if you can, by putting these systems in, you save some of those teachers from getting sick, which you're saying that they're getting sick at school, which no doubt there are people who are getting sick at school. You would be saving on having to pay that sub and the teacher at the same time.
And so my question, Jared, is based on our historic, like what's happened over the last 5 years as far as cold and flu, what does that total dollar figure actually look like? And, as an average for the last 4 or 5 years, because then I think that number then at $120 a day maybe becomes significant as far as a discussion here on what these various units would cost. And then the follow up to that is there a financial cost to the district when a student gets sick? And I realize that the pay is the primary one for the teacher, but does this require additional support teachers or whatever to help the students get back on track if they're gone for a week because of a cold or flu?
Yeah, I mean, in an entire year on substitutes, we probably spend about $400,000. Now, that is not all for sick time. I mean, I would say probably about half of it is on sick time. And we do not distinguish, that sick time into whether it's for a dentist appointment or a general doctor's visit or the flu. So I really have no way of telling you what the cost is just in substitutes because of cold and flu season. As far as any cost when a student gets sick, there may be probably not additional time, but some work put into making sure that kid gets packets or their homework sent home to them. I don't think we necessarily mail a lot of that home. If the kid's out even a week, typically parents will come and pick that up, but there may be some time on either the teacher's part or the teacher aide's part to put that information together so that mom or dad can come pick it up and have that available to the student at home.
My point, in just to kind of summarize, is that I think there's maybe some significant additional health benefits for trying to implement this kind of a program one way or the other, and those additional health benefits could benefit our bottom line.
Yep. Okay. I guess, Greg, we want to try to focus this discussion, to try to get to the end of it. I guess 2 questions is, what's the total cost if we do, I guess what you're showing is units that can be retrofitted for the bipolar. And then what's the total cost if we do everything? And, or do you have this prioritized that if the appetite isn't to do everything here, what's the priority? And then before you answer too, under the senior high, the 3rd bullet under the senior high, it says 2 ERV units. And then over to the right there, the price seems to be for 5.
Terry, the gym has 2 stations for ERV units, but they're double units. So there's that's why if you take a look at the 1,234 times 4, that's how you get to the 5,600. There's actually 4 air handlers in those corners.
Okay. Yeah, because even if you take 4 times that, 1234.50 doesn't equal 56.55. Linda, you're muted.
Sorry. I was going to ask Greg exactly what Mike just asked him in the chat room. What is it that he is recommending?
Okay, I'm not sure which way to answer first, but since
Randy,
a couple of
just a little bit first, we can see the total cost for everything.
Okay. I don't have I was never asked to do the entire district for the total cost of all of that. It was only for areas where students would not be, where they would be without masks for a more generated length of time. So that's why each building only has very limited. As far as a recommendation, I would definitely recommend the needle point bipolar ionization over anything as for even UV lights last roughly 2 years, so you have a lot of maintenance to them. This really, the only maintenance is cleaning off the sensor once a year, they claim, unless you're in an extremely dusty condition, then maybe, twice. The lifetime for them is much greater than, I'm trying to think, it was at least 10 years is what the life, I think, minimum life expectancy out of them was. The price for what we have in front of us, as far as something in all 6 buildings, would be the $62,114, which would be further on down. If you're able to slide that sheet. Oh, no, you already have it there. I'm sorry. Thank you, Randy. You're already there. So that would be the total for those areas. Now, as far as how much would it be if we did the entire, I know how many units we have in all the buildings, but each one I would have to give to each. Well, this is only one firm. I would get, once we've determined what we're interested in, I'll still contact, let's say it's even this list, I'll contact 2 other firms, and of course it would be the least expensive we would go with.
Great. Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't just get 3 bids or 3 quotes on this. We would have to, based on that price of, even if it's around 62,000, unless it's on a state contract, we would have to go through the official bidding process for equipment that expensive.
Well, that's true, but I'm pretty sure that one of the vendors I talked to said that it was on a state contract. I would verify that obviously before I would continue. But yes, otherwise we would have to solicit bids.
Yeah, I mean, we would have to get an engineering firm or somebody to help put bid documents together, which, we've seen in the past is $10,000, $15,000, and then go through the official bidding process, 3 weeks of bidding that out, put a bid date, opening, and then officially awarding the bid. So it would take some time.
Jared, but if it's on the state contract, Greg can get 3 quotes and then we can move ahead.
Yeah, as long as the equipment that we're buying has technically already been bid out on state contract, we can just, buy that through the state contract and not have to go through that process.
Okay. This isn't going to do us any good to get in on. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Cinda.
So I have another thought that I've had since the beginning of this, and somebody set me straight. The incidence of COVID that we are having, because we started looking at this specifically because of COVID. In a perfect world, if we could have this in all of our schools to help with colds and flu and asthma and allergies, we would do it. But we haven't done it until now. Nothing spurred us to look at it until COVID. And so looking at it strictly from a COVID point of view, how many cases of COVID do we have that are being picked up and transmitted in the schools? It's my understanding that most of our cases, and I think all of our cases, have been from community spread. If that's the case, then, if we want to look at doing something with the cafeterias, possibly, but I don't see the absolute benefit for doing this now and doing it under what I feel is a lot of pressure, because of we have to hurry up and get it done before school's over. We have to hurry up and get it done before the vaccine. I mean, I don't think this is the kind of amount of money that we should spend hurrying up when we haven't had it for the entire time the school buildings have been there. And it doesn't seem to be that there's any evidence that the kids and the staff are getting COVID at school. So that's just something that I keep coming back to.
Tamara, I think you raised your hand.
Yes, I am in support of this at this point in time. And the reason is because last week during the policy meeting, we heard that, you know, we want to go back, we want to open 100%. And if that happens, then we're not going to have social distancing in the cafeteria. And I think that, again, I talked about levels of protection. We've done all these things. And even when people are back, even when the teachers are able to get vaccinated, the parents aren't. And we haven't had a lot of cases that we have found out about in the schools, but also we don't know if there's asymptomatic spread as well between our students. So I think we've heard about that in the media. So I think that if we are going to open 100% and not require social distancing, if we're even going to consider that, then we need to consider these for the cafeterias. I don't know what the other rooms are on here. I also know that in the rooms in the life skills rooms in the buildings where some students will not wear masks, I think that we should probably consider that as well. But anyway, so those are my thoughts.
Good, thanks, Tamara. And I guess just adding something in here, it sounds like if we have to bid this and advertise it through the normal bidding procedures, we will probably not see a benefit for the remainder of this school year. And if we do, it'll be at the very tail end of it. If it is on state contract, then that's a more expedient process, and depending upon getting onto someone's work schedule would be another, thing that we'd have to be aware of. But I guess I'll listen to some other comments first. And
I have a question on the bid sheet. So for Horace Mann, it says ceiling AHUs. I'm assuming AHU is air handler unit. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Horace Mann in the cafeteria has 2 air handlers.
So it is the cafeteria. All right.
Correct.
And then Eisenhower the same way. That's unit ventilators in the cafeteria.
Yes. There are 2 unit ventilators in that cafeteria, correct.
And at East Pike, what's an Addison unit?
That's the new unit that was just put on for the front office.
Entryway? Okay.
Yeah, for the front
For the nurse.
because since it's the nurse's suite.
Okay. And then the other things that are listed as rooms, I'm assuming those are like large group instruction rooms or what, like.
They are life skills and autistic support.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Greg, if I understand what you've done here is you've gone around the district and looked for places where kids, because of the function, can't wear a mask or aren't wearing a mask. So life skills, those kind of things are being covered with the 62,000. And we're also doing the gyms and the cafeterias. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there any other rooms that where you have kids without masks that we should be covering here, or is this the complete list?
That I don't know. There could be areas where they aren't, but these are the ones that when we were talking with previous meetings, when we said those would be the students that might have a more difficult time wearing them. That's why that room was given particular attention where other ones were not.
Okay. My concern here is that the vaccinations aren't going to be for the students. We're going to be in this COVID condition for the next, pick a number, 2-3 years for our students. This will help, as Walter said, this will help with the flus and the typical viruses that we get. And whether we can go the state route or we have to go the other route, this is something we should be putting into our buildings, and this is probably something we should be putting in all of our buildings. But This is a start. There will be other rooms that will show up. I see the music rooms were questioned, whether we should include those or not. This gets us started. We go back in and take a look in a year and see what else is going on. Please, I think we need to support this, get this ready to go as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like, I guess we need to know whether this system is on state contract, number one. And Jared, I'm sure you're going to look into that. I'd like to also see if there are other rooms like the life skills room and the music rooms that Tamara mentioned that could be retrofitted. And I guess, Barb, you have any comments whether you're going to support this or not?
I'm still on the fence. I supported going to the board, but as for whether or not I support it for or against, I can't decide yet.
What's your hesitation?
The science behind it.
Of whether it actually works and what percentage?
Yeah, well, I think it does have some impact. Whether or not it's impactful enough for us to install it in the places we are installing it. Just sitting on the, it's a tough call. I need to spend some more time, I think, reading some more articles, and there's not too much out there on it. But yeah, it's a tough one to call. So we'll see.
Okay. And I'd like to see it, and I've been waiting to see it, is that it's 90% efficient, or 60 whatever the number is. It'd be nice to know what that number is. I know, Mike, you'd mentioned a couple times in the chat room about using that, I guess it's COVID relief money.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Kerr. I was just saying, if the board's hesitant on this and you want to look at your options or costs, we're going to receive that money from the federal government. That this is an allowable expense, whatever the board wants to do. But I'm just trying to find out solutions that we don't take it out of our already limited general fund and/or limited capital funds, that we could use those funds, as I believe that's an allowable cost. Jared and I can double check, but I do believe it is. My only other question would be, was Constellation, the people who are doing our audit, ESCO work, LED lighting, all that, do they have any input? Do they have any opportunities? Can they bundle that into the package to save additional monies? And if those are bad questions, I apologize. I'm a lot ignorant on this subject, and I'll defer to the group.
And that's a good question, because I was thinking the same thing too. And I don't know if Mr. Town is still on here or not. I don't think he is.
He is, Mr. Kerr.
Brian's still here.
Brian, do you have any comment on whether this fits into the ESCO program?
You're mute, Brian. Brian, you're mute.
He's still muted.
Brian, you're mute.
Well,
I think he's having some technical difficulties. We can follow up with him if that's okay with you, Mr. Kerr, Jared, and Greg. Actually, Greg can reach out to him and do this, since he's been spearheading this. We can have Greg. We'll defer to Greg on this, because me doing it would be just absolutely disastrous, as I don't understand it as well as Greg does.
okay.
I think I was muted, but I was saying that it says it can inactivate 99.4% of cars, COV-2 in 30 minutes. That's part of their literature.
And Mr. Kerr, you always could if you want to just try it in certain rooms or certain cafeterias, but I think what Greg did was reflective of the place without mask or high areas like the cafeteria. But again, just throwing that out there. And again, I'm almost positive this could be an allowable expense under those funds we just received as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's some follow up on this.
Okay.
Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, I think this has been a really good discussion, and I think some really good points were brought up. I think Tamara mentioned something to the effect that this might help with the reopening, and I certainly agree with that. One of the things that we've been working very hard at throughout this whole pandemic is trying to be as flexible as we can to keep the buildings open and get our kids back in the classroom, but at the same time doing what we can to mitigate the spread. And number one, I think that certainly helps us in those mitigation efforts. And I agree with Tamara that we certainly may need some additional efforts like this in order to get back to everybody's back in the classroom full time. The other thing is, I think Tom made an excellent point as well. You guys have primarily, Greg here has proposed some high priority areas at the tune of 62,000. And, I kind of look at this sort of as one step at a time. I think there may be some additional benefits. We certainly don't want to bust the budget in any way, shape, or form. Looks like Brian's finally got himself unmuted here, but the bottom line is that I think that we should take at least this first step, primarily because of the COVID. And if Mike's right about being able to use the dollars from the easers, I think we should do that. But I think there's another point here, and that's finally, if this is something that other institutions, particularly healthcare, are taking a look at, maybe as we begin to move forward on any new projects, including the office that we're looking at Eisenhower, or any other work we start doing in some of the buildings, maybe we should incorporate these bipolar systems in our HVA systems as a matter of course, and over time we'll get there where maybe the 100% of the district has that capability without actually running ourselves broke doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And then I'll call on you, Bart, after Brian answers.
Yes, thank you. Had a difficult time unmuting for some reason, probably too many windows open. We'll talk with Greg, see about how we may be able to incorporate bipolar as it relates to not only these areas, but district-wide. And thankfully, one of my team members actually was involved in research with bipolar ionization. So we have a tremendous background on that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bart.
My question is for Greg. Greg, are there ventilation units, individual ones in the bathrooms that this system could be hooked upon?
Restrooms only have exhaust fans in them. They do not have ventilation. They don't bring any outside air in. It's just 100% exhaust that goes through them.
Okay. That answers my question.
It uses the rest of the building's air for its makeup, I guess is another way to put it.
Wait, can you explain that again?
It uses the rest of the building's air for its makeup, for in a restroom, like your bathroom at home. If you have, our buildings have a positive pressure in them, different than your house. Remember, we have to bring the outside air in. So think about leaving your window cracked at home in a couple rooms, and you have your exhaust fan on your bathroom. It's pulling all that air and expelling from the building itself.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Looks like we have some follow-up on this. I don't know. I guess we can wait and see as we get, the board meetings next week. I doubt that we have all of our answers prior to next week, but I guess we could have it on the agenda, and if we would be ready to vote on it or discuss it, we could. If not, we could just ignore the motion. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Yeah, Terry, I had my hand up. I didn't know if you saw it.
I did not. Sorry.
Tamara asked in the chat room a little bit ago if anybody knows of any other schools that have done this. That's the first question that I'd like to hear if anybody has any answers. And the second question is for Mr. Town, if you've done any ESCO projects for any other schools along this line, or is this the first time you've had the request?
I have not included it in any projects this year since COVID. Last project I did was the $10 million Beaver project, which was very early on this year. We are looking at including it with the administration over at East Pike, and it is something that is being readily talked about with a number of clients currently, though, number of colleges as well. They like you are looking to see what funding they're going to get because they had to spend a certain amount by end of December last year. The second round is having them think deeper on that for multiple areas on campuses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll go to the last item on the agenda, the busing. I don't know, Mike, are you giving an update or?
I can give an update, but I'm not sure what the question is. Buses have been running. We have been making sure that PPE is provided. I just checked with Greg here today to make sure that we had an adequate supply. And we've been good about any time that the bus company has been low on PPE, we've been providing it for them. So I think we're sufficient to make it through the rest of the year.
Barb, Tom, any questions or? Anybody else have any questions for Mike or?
I'm good. No questions.
Tammy?
Yeah, I just have a real quick question. Well, maybe not a quick question. Okay, the bus that caught fire from the electrical fire last month. My question is, I know you guys do monthly maintenance on the buses. Is the electrical system given a feel to see if the wires have been abrading against the engine block or anything?
Yeah, we did not determine where that fire, to my knowledge, where that fire started. It did not start up in the front of the bus. It started in the rear, somewhere in the back wheel area there. So I believe it was maybe a brake or something of that, more likely than it was electrical. But yeah, the buses are inspected twice a year, once by state police and then halfway through the year by certified inspector. Their mechanic is certified inspection, so they are checked.
Okay, and I know the routine maintenance logs are different than for military vehicles and whatnot. But as someone who worked with Apaches and Blackhawks, I'm just curious, do you switch out different parts for the buses at regular times, or do you wait until do you find an issue with the routine maintenance, or until someone reports an issue?
Yeah, no, they're when they're inspected, anything that needs to be replaced is done so. The only other time I think that they do any switching out of parts or anything like that is when something is reported out of the ordinary by the driver and it's presented to the mechanic to take a look at.
Okay, because I would like to see that the electric component be included in routine maintenance or inspection, because a lot of I did a search on the buses, on the bus type and the manufacturer. after the fire happened with the one bus. And I noticed there was quite a few that had problems from the electrical wiring being abraded. And one engineer said that their buses should be, that their school district buses needed to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb, all of them, because he felt that all of them were an issue. So I wanted to, I know ours aren't an issue, but I want to get a preliminary jump so that it doesn't become one.
Yeah, good enough. I can present that to the bus company for them to review.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. I don't think there was any specific question for you, anything like that. I think it was just an update. Anything else on busing, and then anything else for the good of the order?
Just let you know, I just checked the quote that I had on the bipolar ionization is on CoStar.
Okay, so that means it's on contract, and we could move forward with it on fairly quickly then, if the contractor was available. Is there any way to find out if the contractor is available, like before the end of the school year, or when they would be available?
I will ask him that question tomorrow, because he won't have scheduling in front of him right now. I know. I'm texting him back and forth, so I will ask that question tomorrow.
Okay, appreciate it, Craig. If nothing else, I'd say we're signing off. Good meeting. Thank you all. Good comments, questions, concerns. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Terry.
All right. Night.